The following program is brought to you in part by the film Backdoor Channels, The Price of Peace.
Hi, I'm Leon Charney, and this is the Leon Charney Report. And as all of you know, there's a lot of history being made in the world today, and especially in the Middle East. We're not talking about Rwanda today. We're talking about the Middle East. A declaration of principle and an agreement has been signed between Yasser Arafat and Prime Minister Rabin, which is the government of Israel. B, there is foreign minister yesterday, we saw, visited for the first time Jordan legally with his passport. Another change. C, Mr. Rabin is going to Washington to possibly conclude a treaty with the King Hussein of Jordan. And this is all being done by a Labour government which has 56 votes and 5 Arab votes, which carries them to a majority of 61. We have with us today Begin, who's a formidable member of the Likud party, and we're going to ask him politically how he feels about what's happening in his country today. First thing, on this declaration of principle, or now it's basically going to accord. It was signed in Cairo very reluctantly by Arafat, but he did sign a document, and your government, your prime minister, signed this document. What is the Likud's position on this today?
We have to tell people things how they are, and it was the chief of staff of our military, General Barak, who in the recent 2 months or so several times reiterated his assessment. We know, all of us, that Hamas stands for the destruction of the state of Israel. It was General Barak who assessed that the ultimate goals of both Hamas and the PLO under Arafat are identical, the doing away with the state of Israel, that is. And Arafat himself gave a lot of ground to substantiate that assertion. He came to Gaza 2 weeks ago, and he exclaimed and chanted with the crowd, "In spirit and blood we shall redeem Palestine," which is the whole territory stretching, including the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan and the state of Israel and Judea, Samaria, and Gaza in between. He actually declared September 13th while shaking the hands of my prime minister on the White House lawn. Through the Jordanian TV, he exclaimed, "Long live Palestine, free and Arab." And every Jewish mother in this country knows that in that free and Arab Palestine, there can be no room for a sovereign Jewish state. This is what the future is promising us, and we have to be very, very careful not to do business with the chief of that terrorist organization.
There are many people that we have interviewed who have said that the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister basically know or knew when they were signing these documents that ultimately there would be a Palestinian state and that they did not tell the truth to the country. Would you say that's a correct statement?
I never criticize my government while abroad or while using English in Israel for export, and I won't do it now. Formally, at least, on many occasions, Prime Minister Rabin reiterated his very firm position that he objects to the establishment of an independent Arab PLO and or Hamas state in Judea, Samaria, and Gaza. He has very good reasons for that, and I have a reason to believe that this is his true position.
All right, assuming there's an election in 1996, and I believe you have a new law where you have direct election of Prime Minister, assuming arguendo that the Likud party has a prime minister, and assuming arguendo that you have a Knesset that is in, let's say, a majority in your Knesset, what could they do in 1996 to vitiate or wipe out what has been done by this government legally?
In 1996, even according to the Oslo and Cairo agreements, which Yasser Arafat refers to as the Quraysh non-agreement, according to Muslim history, none of the articles that relate to the final status of Judea, Samaria, and Gaza will be in effect. So there will be a lot of room and time to see to it that the basic interests of the State of Israel are kept. What has to be borne in mind is that we don't know actually what will happen in 2 years or in 2 months in this country. We have business with a terrorist organization which is cooperating with a terrorist organization of Hamas, and it was Prime Minister Rabin himself who sent his liaison minister to the Knesset, to our parliament, several months ago, stating that if the PLO continues to breach the Oslo agreement, we shall all be back in square one and revert to the status quo ante. It was the legal advisor of the foreign ministry and the legal architect of the Oslo and Cairo agreements who stated formally about a month ago that Yasser Arafat's recent statements in Johannesburg calling for openly for a jihad, holy war, for Jerusalem, actually voided already the agreement. So with all the breaching of the agreement, none of the commitments by Yasser Arafat were actually delivered by him. Taking all that into consideration, you might say that the agreement is not there anymore, technically and substantially.
So it's the legal position of the Likud that the agreements were signed by the governments of Israel. However, they have been breached.
By the PLO.
By the PLO.
That's
I mean,
again,
if those are words, Rabin's words, continuous breach, that means there's been a breach. All you need is one breach to break a contract.
If you so wish to do. If some people want to go on and on and on, despite, that's a different matter.
Right.
But the agreement is actually...
You can waive a breach. I mean, we're talking legalistically, but it's very important.
I think it is more than a legalistic aspect. It is a political aspect. These people cannot deliver. The PLO, so-called Palestinian Covenant, calling openly for the destruction of the Jewish state of Israel, is still in effect by the PLO, despite the commitment taken by Arafat September 9th in his letter to Prime Minister Rabin. All that is not there. These people want to see a free, liberated Arab Palestine, including the whole state of Israel, which will explain to you why Arafat was fresh enough and had the guts in Gaza to address directly the Arab citizens of Israel, promising them that they will inherit the earth and they will be made leaders in their nation. This is a very clear reference and a very dangerous one.
At the Madrid Conference, when we spoke with Arab delegates, they told us they were taking direct orders from Arafat, and Mr. Shamir attended that conference. Do you think that he opened the door for what has happened today?
No, not at all. I think that Mr. Shamir insisted that the PLO, as such, will not be participant to the Arab delegation, and the Arab delegation representing the Arabs in Judea, Samaria, and Gaza was a part and parcel of the delegation representing the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. It was a joint delegation. We insisted that no Arab representing Jerusalem will be part of the delegation, and when Saib Arikat, the guy with the kafiyah, tried to monkey around saying formally that he represents the PLO, he was asked to be out of the room, and he left the room, and he was not a part to those negotiations. We were very particular about it, and we were actually very correct on the matter.
All right, we're going to cut for commercial break, and I'm going to ask Benny Begin how the polls are doing in Israel. How come the Likud is trailing in the polls, if they are trailing in the polls, and they change every other day? So we'll ask him. Don't leave us.
In modern Middle East history, only one peace treaty has stood the test of time, the 1978 Camp David Accord. In the new documentary film, Backdoor Channels, The Price of Peace, learn the true story behind the greatest diplomatic achievement of our time and its lessons for the future.
The price of peace is very high. To have this courageous man and my close friend killed.
Winner of the Telly Award for Best Cultural Program. Now available at select stores including Barnes & Noble and online at Amazon.com. Now get the book the hit movie was based on, Leon Charney's Backdoor Channels. Learn about the backdoor channel negotiations that led to the historic 1978 Israeli-Egyptian peace treaty. Become a witness to history and order Backdoor Channels online at Amazon or Barnes & Noble. Also available at all other retailers and booksellers. Or download the audiobook at iTunes or Audible.com. Relive history. Order Backdoor Channels. Get best-selling author Leon Charney's latest book, The Battle of the Two Talmuds. Join Charney as he explores years of Jewish history to find out why and how Talmudic scholars and rabbis abandoned the Holy Land for the lands of the diaspora. Learn about the power struggles behind the creation of the Jerusalem and Babylonian Talmuds. It's a book critics call engaging and enlightening. A book which will be of interest to people of every faith. Now available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble, or download the audiobook of The Battle of the Two Talmuds at iTunes or audible.com. Leon Charney sets out to discover the true meaning of the Kaddish, the Jewish custom of reciting a prayer to commemorate the death of a close relative. Join Charney as he finds out the history of the Kaddish and how it has evolved. Reviewed as a refreshing walk through Jewish history and a book that deserves to be read by both Jews and non-Jews, The Mystery of the Kaddish is now available online at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all other retailers and booksellers. Or download the audiobook at audible.com or on iTunes. Discover The Mystery of the Kaddish. Available now over iTunes, Amazon, and Google Play. Leon Charney's cantorial CD and Disco Lam. Listen as Charney movingly sings El Moleh Rachamim and Charney's amazing rendition of a disco remix of Adon Olam, all sung in the incredible and individual Charney style. Also listen to the CDs on Rhapsody. Download Leon Charney's cantorial songs and Disco Lam, the disco remix of Adon Olam on Amazon, iTunes, and Google Play. Or listen in on Rhapsody. All available now.
We're speaking with Benny Begin, a member of Knesset, Likud Party, member of the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee, and can't deny it, he's the son of a great Prime Minister Menachem Begin, who signed the Camp David Accords, and I'm sure that Benny Begin is an expert on the Camp David Accords and on autonomy, which we'll ask him about also. But first, let's talk about the country. Are the people, first of all, Rabin has 56 members, let's say Jewish members of the government, and 5 Arabs. So it's 61 right now, his plurality. He's transforming the country with a minor, I would say, authority of government. Would you agree with that?
A freely elected government is a legitimate government. It's the only government, and it is empowered to follow its policy. And no one can interfere, physically or otherwise, with that policy being executed. For us in opposition, the thing to do is, of course, to cultivate the public, to tell them the truth as we see it, to talk, to walk, to write, and to wait until the next elections come, when we can replace the government, come to power, and see the interests of the State of Israel being followed the way we think they should.
What would the Likud do with, is there a Palestinian problem, and what would they do with the Palestinians?
We have had our policy. It is a sound policy. Actually, the Camp David formula is the only practical, wise solution that has any chance of bringing a genuine change in the ill relations between Jews and Arabs west of the Jordan River. It is based on the assumption that the Jewish people have an eternal, natural right for their homeland, Eretz Israel, which English-speaking people call Palestine, and the Arabs, Muslims, Palestine. We have the right to the land. However, we do understand and accept that there are many Arabs there. They will be our neighbors. They will be the inhabitants of Judea, Samaria, and Gaza, and the Galilee, for that matter, for many generations to come. And we have to extend our hand. We did that in Camp David. The essence of Camp David, the wise element of it, is that we perceived of an experimental period of 5 years in which the Arabs will have to prove that they are ready to coexist with us peacefully. And in the period of 5 years, they would run their lives on a day-to-day basis, run by a political organ which is a functional one, an administrative council with no legislative powers, no mini-parliament, no embryo of a sovereign state. According to the Camp David formula, Israel should have the jurisdiction over the territory. The Arab Administrative Council should have the jurisdiction over the inhabitants. And Israel is, of course, responsible for security. From that point of view, the Oslo Agreement is diametrically opposed to the Camp David Accords. No administrative council, but the legislative one. Not the jurisdiction over their jurisdiction over the inhabitants. They would have jurisdiction over territory too, and they are responsible for anti-terrorist combat, called internal security. Under those conditions, it will be close to impossible to see that plant planted at Camp David really grow to improve relations between Arabs and Jews.
What was your reaction to the letter sent by the Foreign Minister Perez to the Foreign Minister of Oslo about the sanctity or the ability for Arabs to pray in Muslim places of worship in Jerusalem?
My friend Dan Meridor and myself had some part in exposing the letter, and it went far beyond religious rights of religious people to observe their religion. It actually 3 times reiterated the term Eastern Jerusalem, thus indicating maybe a tendency to subdivide the city into 2 parts, Eastern and Western one. And he also committed the government of Israel to see to it to encourage the operation of all Palestinian, that is PLO, institutions in Jerusalem, including, one should understand from the wording of the letter, including all institutions, including political ones, of the PLO. It is a very far-reaching letter, and it already causes trouble here when the PLO says, we have a letter of commitment, you cannot oust us from Jerusalem, as Prime Minister Rabin tries to do justifiably lately.
I'm a little confused, though. What do you mean you and Meridor found out about this letter? This was not a public document?
No, this document, as some people would know, was kept in secret for many months. It was not made public, and it took us some time to expose it and to have government officials admit that such letter exists with the severity of its significance.
Is that commonplace in government activity, that secret letters exist like that?
Sometimes secret letters do exist. Sometimes governments should be allowed to keep a lot of their diplomacy secret. I think that sometimes it is a precondition for successful diplomatic relations, and I wouldn't complain that much about it. However, in this opportunity, we have business with Jerusalem, as my father used to call it, Jerusalem, D.C., David's capital, and you don't monkey around with your internal capital city. That letter should have been made public, should have been known to the Knesset, but now it's all right. Everyone knows, and things have been rectified from this point of view.
Tell us about the Likud today. How united are you?
As united as any Jewish organization can be. You know something about Jewish organizations. I think that lately in this country, split in parties has been the lot of Raful's party, Tzomet, of Gandhi's party, Moledet, and of the ruling party, of the Labour Party. They really split and splintered. In Likud, there is always some noise, but we have one basic ideology, we have a common platform, and we, all of us, work a lot in order to see to it that the public is convinced that the Oslo, Cairo, Quraysh agreements do not prevail, and that they entail a very grave danger ahead for the state of Israel.
I'm going to tell you an interesting story about Benny Begin. He's in a conspiracy of good with Ephraim Katzir, the former president of Israel. They are building an institution for higher learning, and he's going to tell you about it. It's fascinating. Katzir and Begin together building an institution. We'll be right back.
In modern Middle East history, only one peace treaty has stood the test of time, the 1978 Camp David Accord. In the new documentary film, Backdoor Channels, The Price of Peace, learn the true story behind the greatest diplomatic achievement of our time and its lessons for the future.
The price of peace is very high to have this courageous man and my close friend killed.
Winner of the Telly Award for Best Cultural Program. Now available at select stores including Barnes & Noble and online at Amazon.com. Now get the book the hit movie was based on, Leon Charney's Backdoor Channels. Learn about the backdoor channel negotiations that led to the historic 1978 Israeli-Egyptian peace treaty. Become a witness to history and order Backdoor Channels online at Amazon or Barnes & Noble. Also available at all other retailers and booksellers. Or download the audiobook at iTunes or Audible.com. Relive history. Order Backdoor Channels. Get best-selling author Leon Charney's latest book, The Battle of the Two Talmuds. Join Charney as he explores years of Jewish history to find out why and how Talmudic scholars and rabbis abandoned the Holy Land for the lands of the diaspora. Learn about the power struggles behind the creation of the Jerusalem and Babylonian Talmuds. It's a book critics call engaging and enlightening, a book which will be of interest to people of every faith. Now available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble, or download the audiobook of The Battle of the Two Talmuds at iTunes or audible.com. Leon Charney sets out to discover the true meaning of the Kaddish, the Jewish custom of reciting a prayer to commemorate the death of a close relative. Join Charney as he finds out the history of the Kaddish and how it has evolved. Reviewed as a refreshing walk through Jewish history and a book that deserves to be read by both Jews and non-Jews, The Mystery of the Kaddish is now available online at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all other retailers and booksellers. Or download the audiobook at audible.com or on iTunes. Discover the mystery of the Kaddish. Available now over iTunes, Amazon, and Google Play. Leon Charney's cantorial CD in Disco Lam. Listen as Charney movingly sings El Moleh Rachamim and Charney's amazing rendition of a disco remix of Adon Olam, all sung in the incredible and individual Charney style. Also listen to the CDs on Rhapsody. Download Leon Charney's cantorial songs in Disco Lam, the disco remix of Adon Olam on Amazon, iTunes, and Google Play. Or listen in on Rhapsody. All available now.
We're speaking with Begin, who is a member of the Likud party and the very important Defense and Foreign Affairs Committee. We had Ori on our show, who's your chairman, a couple of weeks ago. And but in your spare time, Benny, you're working with Ephraim Katzir, who's a great scientist, former president of Israel, and
a great person,
a wonderful person. There's no words for Ephraim Katzir, one of the nicest people God created. What is this university that you and Ephraim Katzir are involved with?
In the town of Ariel, in the heart of the Shomron, Samaria, we have established several years ago a college which now hosts more than 3,000 students, including a rather strong scientific research institute.
All Jewish, by the way?
Most of them Jewish, but any Arab is eligible.
Open to Arabs?
Of course. It's an open educational institution with many fields of education. Most of the students come from the Tel Aviv, Netanya, Rehovot coastal plain area, very few from the Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria. And we're trying to develop a home for those who want to learn, who want to achieve in higher education. Vacancies in higher education in Israel are a great problem in this country. We will be needing in the next 5-6 years about 30 to 40,000 openings in universities and colleges that are not there yet. It's a real issue here. And we try to supply that kind of a demand with the best education that one can have in this country.
What's the name of the college?
The college is the College of Judea and Samaria in Ariel. And President Katzir agreed to serve on the Board of Governors of our college, together with two former presidents of universities, not of the country of Israel. And the chairman of the board is former Defense Minister Misha Arens, another very fine gentleman, and foreign minister.
And ambassador
to the United States, right, and a fine gentleman with a very strong academic background. It's a good bunch. We have excellent people on that board. And therefore, we try to develop that learning institution, some of it through funding by the Israeli government, which is very correct in that sense, even if it has a different policy regarding Judea and Samaria.
Because it's over the green line.
Because if it's beyond the green line. But of course, a part of it has to come from private funding, which is something that I devote a lot of time to.
Do they have a geology department?
No, but they do have some earth science, such as agriculture department. I used to teach in that college when it was in an embryonic stage. Several years ago, I taught introductory geology, and I liked it very much.
Benny,
these were the good times.
Benny, that's right. I was going to ask you that question. Why does a renowned geologist give up the good times and go to politics?
Because these are very difficult times. And you have to devote your time if you can, if you feel you can contribute, if you feel you can make a dent, if you feel you can make a difference to that crisis situation in which we are. If I can have a fraction of the population be convinced by the arguments that we produce, then this is something that should be done in the next couple of years.
All right. We're on the eve of something potential happening with King Hussein of Jordan. What is the Likud's position now on that? I was in Jordan yesterday where I saw the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister of Israel meet for the first time legally. I was on the bus with Israeli correspondents who were able to enter Jordan with an Israeli passport, which is very emotional for the Israelis. What's the Likud's position with respect to Jordan?
Such meetings between the leadership of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan and the State of Israel are very important, very positive, and we should look positively and optimistically towards the future. However, I can state proudly that this is a direct development ensuing from the Likud government under Mr. Shamir's initiative back in October of 1991, in which for the first time Arab delegation from Jordan, an Arab delegation from Damascus, from Syria, met at Madrid and then in Washington in order to conduct direct, open, public negotiations between those countries. What we see now is an offshoot of that initiative, and we should be still very careful about the details of the agreement. The Hashemites still wouldn't like to conduct negotiations on the section of the border along the Jordan River, north of the Dead Sea. This is an issue. And there are several other outstanding issues which must be resolved, but let's hope for the best.
Do you think next week a peace treaty would be signed, or that's an impossibility between Prime Minister Rabin and King Hussein?
I think that we are rather remote from the signing of a peace treaty. Prime Minister Majali of Jordan even indicated yesterday that what the area needs is comprehensive peace, signaling that he is reluctant to sign a peace treaty with Israel without first seeing a peace treaty signed between Israel and Syria. This is very remote at any place. So we have to be cautiously optimistic. This is good enough for that very troubled, tricky, muddy part of the world called the Middle East.
Benny, thanks a lot. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Leon.
Bye.
Shalom.
In modern Middle East history, only one peace treaty has stood the test of time, the 1978 Camp David Accord. In the new documentary film, Backdoor Channels, The Price of Peace, learn the true story behind the greatest diplomatic achievement of our time and its lessons for the future.
The price of peace is very high to have this courageous man and my close friend killed.
Winner of the Telly Award for Best Cultural Program. Now available at select stores including Barnes & Noble and online at Amazon.com. Now get the book the hit movie was based on, Leon Charney's Backdoor Channels. Learn about the backdoor channel negotiations that led to the historic 1978 Israeli-Egyptian peace treaty. Become a witness to history and order Backdoor Channels online at Amazon or Barnes & Noble. Also available at all other retailers and booksellers. Or download the audiobook at iTunes or Audible.com. Relive history. Order Backdoor Channels. Get best-selling author Leon Charney's latest book, The Battle of the Two Talmuds. Join Charney as he explores years of Jewish history to find out why and how Talmudic scholars and rabbis abandoned the Holy Land for the lands of the diaspora. Learn about the power struggles behind the creation of the Jerusalem and Babylonian Talmuds. It's a book critics call engaging and enlightening. A book which will be of interest to people of every faith. Now available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble, or download the audiobook of The Battle of the Two Talmuds at iTunes or Audible.com. Leon Charney sets out to discover the true meaning of the Kaddish, the Jewish custom of reciting a prayer to commemorate the death of a close relative. Join Charney as he finds out the history of the Kaddish and how it has evolved. Reviewed as a refreshing walk through Jewish history and a book that deserves to be read by both Jews and non-Jews, The Mystery of the Kaddish is now available online at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all other retailers and booksellers. Or download the audiobook at Audible.com or on iTunes. Discover The Mystery of the Kaddish.
And we're continuing our travel to Jordan. This is the first travel to Jordan by an Israeli foreign minister or an Israeli official. It was quite an exciting time we saw on the bus when the Israeli journalists crossed the Allenby Bridge. And we thought we'd get a bit of an analysis of what happened yesterday with Shimon Peres and Prime Minister Mujani and Warren Christopher. We've picked a great expert on Jordanian affairs. He's written a book on it, Professor Dunn Shueftan, I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
Whatever.
And he saw most of what happened yesterday, and he has some ideas. What did you think?
Well, I think it's a very good thing that we are finally doing the right thing with Jordan. We've had a strategic alliance with Jordan for more than 50 years now. It worked very well until the Oslo agreement. In Oslo, we substituted an alliance with Jordan with an alliance with the PLO. And this worried King Hussein stiff. I think he has a very, very serious problem as a result of the Israeli policy. And now we're finally trying to rectify some of the things we did in Oslo, and I'm delighted we're doing the right thing now.
I can confirm your point. About 6 weeks ago, I interviewed the ambassador from Jordan to the United Nations, and he nearly used expletives to say what Mr. Arafat did to King Hussein. They were absolutely mortified, upset. They thought it was scandalous. I mean, they thought they were betrayed. It was terrible, and this was said on our television show, so you're absolutely right. The question is this, can it be repaired?
Well, to some extent, one major damage that we've done is to recognize the PLO as the legitimate representative of the Palestinian people, namely not the Palestinians in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. This would be only natural after Oslo, but the representative of the Palestinian people, namely that Arafat represents most people who live on the East Bank, not King Hussein, but the PLO represents most people who live on the West Bank. This makes King Hussein redundant. We can still correct some of the damage, but not all of the damage, and it depends very much on what we do in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip.
How do we correct the damage?
How do we correct the damage? We don't let the West Bank, Gaza Strip Palestinian state that we've established in Oslo develop in a way that can endanger Jordan. First of all, we don't give them a position in Jerusalem. If any Arab would have any position in Jerusalem, it should be the Jordanians rather than the Palestinians. From an Israeli point of view, it has a major advantage because the Jordanians have a capital city, Amman. The Palestinians want a capital city in Jerusalem. From a Jordanian point of view, it is very important for King Hussein to be the guardian of the holy places. It will strengthen his position inside his own kingdom and in the Arab world. The second thing is, don't let the PLO be too strong, because the only reason the PLO for the moment is not acting on his irredentist ambitions vis-à-vis Israel and Jordan, namely at the moment it is not trying to undermine the very existence of Israel and Jordan, the only reason it is not doing it is that it is weak, that it is impotent. If we allow the PLO to become strong, it will automatically take over first of all Jordan and then try to undermine Israel. If the PLO takes over Jordan, we will have one hostile reality from Tehran to the middle of Jerusalem. This, from an Israeli point of view, is very serious. You have the Iranians, the Iraqis, Jordan under the PLO, and the PLO, and this is a very serious threat to Israel, even an existential threat to Israel. If between the PLO and Iraq and Iran we have a strong Jordanian state, pro-American, pro-Israeli, moderate, this from an Israeli point of view is much better, from a Jordanian point of view is much better, and I dare say for most Palestinians in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip much better, because they don't want to continue fighting against Jordan and against Israel. They want to live peacefully in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, and the PLO may not make it possible. So anything that weakens the PLO strengthens Jordan and Israel.
So I could say that you're not too excited about this September 13th meeting between Rabin and Mr. Arafat.
Well, it has one advantage. You know, the anti-Semites always said that the Jews are a smart people. Now we have tangible proof that this is not the case. The Israeli government demonstrated it in Oslo. But I'll be delighted if things work out with Jordan, if they work out with Syria. This will be very important for Israel. And perhaps in the balance between Jordanians and Palestinians in the West Bank, we can get a better deal.
Isn't it too late?
Well, It would have been nicer if we would have done the right thing in the beginning, but now we're being clever. You know, the difference between a wise and a clever person is that a clever person can weasel his way out of a predicament that a wise person would never put himself in the first place. So now, since we've not been wise, we're being very clever. And I hope we'll continue to be clever.
We were in the Gaza Strip when Arafat arrived, and we sensed some jubilation amongst its population, and I dare say that I felt that these people experienced some kind of feeling of independence. I think, obviously, the Prime Minister could have been more forthcoming to his people and said, look, what I've done on September 13th is a prelude to a Palestinian state. And I'm not sure the population here was told that. So from that point of view, you know, I might agree with you. What I did sense in Jordan yesterday was fear. If I tried to interview normal Jordanian people, they were very fearful of talking, especially to the Israeli press. And they sort of were deferring to the king all the time. The king was the master. Now, obviously, if something takes place between Rabin and the king in Washington, that fear might be allayed. But other than that, I was involved in Camp David, and I felt the Egyptians were far more effusive about what happened than what was happening yesterday with the Jordanians. And it was very hard for me to get a Jordanian to tell me that he spoke English. I mean, it was funny. I mean, it's like English didn't exist. We were in Jupiter or Mars, and that was fear. Finally, I told him I was from American television. I got the fellow to talk. And he found out the cameramen were Israeli, and he really went into a panic. So it's not as beautiful as Shimon Peres points out. I mean, it's not this beautiful, wonderful fulfillment of the dream of Abraham, and yet it's a step forward.
Yes, I very strongly agree with your observations. First of all, anything that Shimon Peres says about the new Middle East, or if you want to take it to the extreme, he's speaking about Benelux, Israel, Jordan, and the PLO being like Benelux, because, you know, Yasser Arafat is so much like the Grand Duke of Luxembourg, and everybody in the Gaza Strip speaks fluent Dutch, so we'll have Benelux here. That's a very, very different ball game. This here is the Wild East. If you don't pack a six-shooter, you don't go into the saloon. But in Jordan, I think the atmosphere that you've seen yesterday will change. It will take perhaps a little time, I don't think a very long time. The moment the Jordanians will see that it's okay to be warm to Israelis, I think they will be, because after all, we have a common enemy. The Jordanians know about Arafat. They don't need us to tell them. They could tell us what Arafat is all about. And when they realized how much benefit they can have from peace, without these illusions about, you know, a new Middle East and so on, but there are tangible benefits for Jordan, and the most important thing is the stability of Jordan depends on a strong Israel, and they want a strong Israel. I think that this attitude will change. The Jordanians will be, perhaps from all the Arab countries around us, the best allies that we can have. The Syrians will continue to be bitter and hostile, even if they sign a peace treaty with Israel. The Egyptians belong to a different milieu. The Jordanians are very strong, are very close. They know the Palestinians very well, and I think we'll have a very good relationship with them.
You teach Arab affairs at Haifa University. Are you a member of any political party?
Well, I used to support Rabin for the last 25, 30 years, and what he represents. Yigal Allon before Rabin and later Rabin.
So basically the Labour Party.
Basically Labour Party, until Rabin transformed before Camp David. And now, when he struck a strategic alliance with the PLO, I can't continue to agree with him. What happened with him is a very, very major change. At the moment, I don't have any political home in the Israeli political spectrum, and I don't think most Israelis have. This is a very dangerous thing in Israel. You have the right represented in Likud, you have the radical left and left represented in Labour, and in the middle, where people like me, I belong to the extreme center, where people like me used to stand, where people like Rabin used to stand, there is no political party, and I don't think it's very good for the Israeli democratic system. And it'll be worse if we have these direct elections for prime minister.
Do you think Rabin knows where he's going now? I have the sense of feeling he's on a train, he doesn't know where it's going.
I agree that at least he doesn't have a strategy that is as clearly laid out as he had before. The strategy I support until this very day is something that Rabin adopted in May of 1989, and he followed it very consistently, namely an alliance between Israel, Jordan, and the 1967 PLO, what they sometimes call Jerusalem PLO, namely not the 1948 PLO. Because if you have an alliance with the 48 PLO, you cannot answer their concerns. What they want is not Nablus. They want Jaffa and Haifa, because they represent all the Palestinian people. Millions of them don't see in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip their home. Hundreds of thousands of them live in the Gaza Strip for the last 46 years and don't consider it to be their home. So we don't have a solution for the 48 refugees, and you can't strike a strategic alliance with them. There is a contradiction inside Rabin's policy, and I agree with you. I don't think he has something systematic.
In your opinion, what transformed them?
I don't know. I wish I knew. I really don't know. I can very easily typify the transformation. I can explain what happened. I can't explain why. I don't have any knowledge. I spoke to many people who know Rabin very closely. I myself know him quite well. I could never get a good answer. The answers I had were very shallow.
We'll be back in 1 minute after a commercial break to continue with Professor Don Shueftan, who's a professor of Arab Affairs at Haifa University, and also has written a book about the Jordanians. Interesting book to have around today. We'll be back.
In modern Middle East history, only one peace treaty has stood the test of time, the 1978 Camp David Accord. In the new documentary film, Backdoor Channels, The Price of Peace, learn the true story behind the greatest diplomatic achievement of our time and its lessons for the future.
The price of peace is very high. To have this courageous man and my close friend killed.
Winner of the Telly Award for Best Cultural Program. Now available at select stores including Barnes & Noble and online at Amazon.com. Now get the book the hit movie was based on, Leon Charney's Backdoor Channels. Learn about the backdoor channel negotiations that led to the historic 1978 Israeli-Egyptian peace treaty. Become a witness to history and order Backdoor Channels online at Amazon or Barnes & Noble. Also available at all other retailers and booksellers. Or download the audiobook at iTunes or Audible.com. Relive history. Order Backdoor Channels. Get best-selling author Leon Charney's latest book, The Battle of the Two Talmuds. Join Charney as he explores years of Jewish history to find out why and how Talmudic scholars and rabbis abandoned the Holy Land for the lands of the diaspora. Learn about the power struggles behind the creation of the Jerusalem and Babylonian Talmuds. It's a book critics call engaging and enlightening. A book which will be of interest to people of every faith. Now available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble, or download the audiobook of The Battle of the Two Talmuds at iTunes or Audible.com. Leon Charney sets out to discover the true meaning of the Kaddish, the Jewish custom of reciting a prayer to commemorate the death of a close relative. Join Charney as he finds out the history of the Kaddish and how it has evolved. Reviewed as a refreshing walk through Jewish history and a book that deserves to be read by both Jews and non-Jews, The Mystery of the Kaddish is now available online at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all other retailers and booksellers. Or download the audiobook at Audible.com or on iTunes. Discover The Mystery of the Kaddish.
Professor, are you not disappointed in the Likud?
Yes, but I didn't have many hopes concerning the Likud, so you can't be very deeply disappointed. I supported the basic trade-off that labor or the labor movement proposed since the 1967 war, which is essentially 48 for 67.
Land for peace?
Land for peace,
Alone
if
plan.
you want. Alone plan, yes, to be more specific. I wrote the article that Alon has signed about the Palestinian problem, so I'm a little knowledgeable about Alon's positions on the subject. And the question is not the magnitude of the concessions. The question I have, the problem I have with the present government is that we're giving away all the bargaining chips and we are getting very little in return on the Palestinian front. I think on the Jordanian front, the government is doing the right thing. And on the Syrian front, it'll probably do the right thing. But on the Palestinian front, we've made a very major mistake. But, Israel today is so strong, we can even afford to be dumb. This was not the case a few decades ago.
I asked somebody the same question. I said, suppose Rabin has made a mistake. He said our defense forces are strong enough to reverse the mistake. I'm not sure that's a truism. It's an interesting point of view. I'm not sure you can reverse it because world opinion, you're fighting world opinion, so it's a different feeling. My question to you is, you're an expert on Jordan. If the king decides to retire, is the crown prince capable of carrying the country?
You know, we should be very careful about what we say about people who are in a number 2 position before they become number 1. Remember how smart we all were about Sadat and what people thought about other people.
Well, we thought Mubarak was good. I can tell you that.
No, but when Sadat was second to Nasser, and when he came to power, we said, here is a schmuck and you shouldn't take him seriously. And you never know.
Well, it's a Hebrew word?
Schmuck, I think it is a good translation from the English to the Yiddish, but I suppose every red-blooded American knows what a schmuck is, and if he doesn't, he can just look around, and I'm sure he'll find examples.
There's a fellow named Jackie Mason who explains it very well.
Well, I'm sure that he can contribute to Middle East politics.
He does. So you really don't want to predict?
It really is not the question of the one personality. You need only one person that can really change things dramatically. And then if you have an elite, and this is the question in Jordan, even without the king, if the existing Jordanian elite will continue to do what it did, if it will be committed to what it was committed since the 1920s, Jordan will continue to be a stable state. If, on the other hand, even the king stays in power, even King Hussein stays in power, but you have the Muslim radicals as strong as they were during the Gulf War, the king cannot do what he wants to do. Right. The problem was, look, in 1967 he didn't want to make war, and he made war. In 1991 he didn't want to join Saddam Hussein, he joined Saddam Hussein. It's not what he wants, it's what he can.
What do you know about the Prime Minister Mujali?
Majali, well, first of all, he was selected by King Hussein in order to promote exactly this policy. And in different stages of the negotiations with Israel, he worked with the king to promote this. Now, this is a tradition in Jordan. This is what King Abdullah did with Rifai. This is what King Hussein is doing with the Majalis, with this particular prime minister. And it is really primarily dependent on the king, who is willing to take the responsibility for this new policy. Majali himself cannot do it. If the king believes that he can fight off the internal radical Muslim opposition and the possible Palestinian opposition, at the moment it did not emerge, but if it will emerge, then he can use a good person to do it, and Majali is a good person.
The foreign ministry people yesterday told me that Mujali doesn't go to the bathroom without permission from the king. So you're absolutely correct.
Well, anybody who wants to do anything in Jordan shouldn't do anything without permission from the king. Democracy didn't break out in the Arab world, and I'm not sure it would be good for Israel if they played with democracy before you have the infrastructure of democracy. At the moment, you know, you have autocratic regimes, and Jordan is one of the softest in the Arab world. In Jordan, you get up in the morning and you know if you live in the afternoon. You couldn't say the same thing in Iraq or in Syria. These are very different countries.
All right, the big question. Why did Hussein move now? Was it monetary with the United States? Did he need U.S. support? Did he have to get rid of the $700 million debt? Or there were internal reasons that we don't know about?
Well, there are many reasons. The question for King Hussein is not why did he move ahead now, but what stopped him from moving ahead in the past and now is no longer there. And then you can add the incentives. What was the major problem that Hussein confronted for many years was the fact that he wanted to make peace with Israel isolated from the whole Arab world. So before 77, before Sadat, it was totally impossible. And between 77 and the late 1980s, early 90s, it was practically impossible because Jordan not only couldn't be the first, it couldn't even be the second. But when everybody is negotiating with Israel, and this is what we have since the Madrid Conference, when everybody is only trying to get better conditions from Israel, why shouldn't he do it? Particularly after Syria comes so close to negotiating with Israel a deal that seems, at least I think, in the near future, to have very good chances of working. When the PLO has already negotiated with Israel, when he understands that if he doesn't move in now, the damage of the Israeli PLO agreement will be something that cannot be reversed anymore. Now a part of it can be reversed. If he waits another 2, 3, 4 years, they establish a full-fledged state here, he will not be in a position to reverse it, and then add to it all the incentives that you have mentioned. Money, and it's not only money directly from the United States, it is American pressure on Saudi Arabia to start giving him money, or Gulf states giving him money that he was cut off from after the Gulf War. So you have all these incentives.
All right, final question. Are you optimistic about the position of Israel in the Middle East today?
Yes, and let me tell you why. We are so strong we can even afford to make major mistakes. And it's not just the strength of the Israeli army. Israel is a first world country. The Arab world is a third world reality. The third world gets worse and worse every day. They don't have the infrastructure to lift from the terrible situation they are in. And Israel has a major gap vis-a-vis the Arabs, because we managed to grab the coattail of the first world and we became a first world state. So it's the economy and education and technology and the army and the strength of the society. So you can afford to try, even not succeed in everything, you succeed in most things. You just compare, immediately after the 73 war, people used to tell me, in 20 years Israel will be doomed and the Arabs will be at the peak of their success.
Right.
Look at what happened in 20 years.
21 years.
Oh, 21 years since the Yom Kippur War. There isn't a single Arab state that is not much worse off today than it was 20 years ago. Look at Saudi Arabia. Every $100 billion made Saudi Arabia be in a worse situation than it used to be. And Israel is in a much better, you visit Israel every year, you know that Israel of 20 years ago and today are two different countries. And the Arab world has major problems. They used to say 20 years ago, one day Kuwait will be a great state. Well, look at Kuwait, look at Saudi Arabia, look at Lebanon, look at what is happening throughout the Arab world. So we've really picked very good enemies. We couldn't pick it any better. We don't confront the American Air Force, the German armor, Irish terrorists. We confront Arabs. It's tough, but we can make it.
It's tough to be a Jew in Argentina too, isn't it?
It's tough to be a Jew in Argentina. They should come here. What else is new? But not because they bomb up some building, but because if you look at what happened here to Jews and what is happening throughout the world to Jews, I think that this is still, I'm sorry, I'm an old-fashioned Zionist.
This is what your President Ezer Weizmann says.
Yes, and I'm delighted to hear him saying it very openly and very loudly. It is precisely what needs to be said, and this is precisely what a president needs to say.
Don, pleasure to meet you.
Enjoyed.
See you another 21 years. Israel will be stronger.
Okay, every 2 decades.
Good luck.